Hi party folks, my name is Skyyy and thank you so much for watching my channel, Skyyy Reads. So I have noticed that I have a little bit of an addiction to collecting books, and I've also noticed that I don't read as many books as I buy. So I have decided to read every single book in my room before I continue to buy or collect any more books, and I wanted to start this YouTube channel as a way to document my progress. Also, do not pay no mind to the weird lighting. So I'm using like my tablet to film, and for some reason when I press the video thing, it makes the video a lot darker for some reason. Okay, so with no further ado, here is my book review of Slammed by Colleen Hoover. So this is backwards, but thanks for thanks for noticing. I'll put a thing. So Slammed by Colleen Hoover is about a girl who moves to Michigan from Texas after her father dies. And it is basically a love story. That's all I'm really going to say about the book. I don't like to go into books knowing too much about them, so I don't know how much you guys would want to know. But just to give a few non-spoiler thoughts, if you are a fan of forbidden romances, and also if you are a fan of um I don't know, of stupid irrational main characters, and still love, then this is going to be the book for you. I rated this book 2 stars on the story graph. Okay, so to move on to the spoiler section of the review, I this book was so infuriating for me to read. I flip-flopped about this book multiple times through my experience. So, like I said, I don't like to go into books knowing too much about them. And, sorry. And for some reason, I thought that this book took place in middle school. I thought that the main character was going to be 12 or 13. I don't know why I thought that. And I knew that it had to do with poetry, and I also knew that it was a romance. So those are the only things that I knew going into the book. So reading the book and finding out that the main character was actually 18 gave me a lot of relief. Gave me a little bit more relief. And I actually really enjoyed the writing style. It moved very easily for me. And the character development was, a little bit strong as well. I really found myself liking the main character, liking, her personality and her sense of humor. Now, I also liked the character Will as well. So, just I guess to give a little bit more. So when the main character is driving a U-Haul to their new house in Michigan, and when she gets out of the U-Haul, she meets the guy across the street. They hit it off really well, and both of them have 9-year-old little brothers who also hit it off really well. She finds out that he is 21 years old and she's 18, so, you know, like no problem there. They have, I guess, appropriate ages to be dating each other. And they go out on a date and they both really, really enjoy the date. Now, this is another part of the book that I really liked. So we learn a lot about the main character. For example, the fact that her father died, and she's, kind of dealing with that, and she doesn't want to move to Michigan. But we don't learn that much about Will. And the way that the author decides to introduce Will to the story is by or not to introduce him, but to give his backstory. I thought it was very creative in I thought that the way that she chose to do so was incredibly creative. It wasn't info dumpy at all. So the way that they are on their first date, and he takes her to a slam poetry reading, and he gets up and he reads his poem. His poem is really good. I was actually very I don't know why. I don't want to say surprised, but like 90% of the poems that I read inside of this book were very beautiful, and I really liked the way that they were written. And I also liked the way that they were italicized and bolded so that you could kind of get that slam poetry feel while you were reading it inside of your head. But when Will reads his poem, we find out that his parents died, and that he died when he was 19, and from that point forward he was given, the very important responsibility of having to raise his 7-year-old brother at the time. So, sorry, excuse me. So she and Will end up bonding over this experience, because he reads poetry, and like that's hot, and it kind of is. And then the next day, so he tells her, like, hey, I'll be back home around 4. And she goes, wow, that's really great. I will see you around that time. She goes to her new school, where she ends up meeting a girl named Eddie, who later becomes her best friend. And during third period, she finds out that Will is her teacher. So, how this didn't come up during their date, I guess it doesn't. I guess it kind of like makes a little bit of sense as to why it didn't necessarily come up during their first date, or why neither of them knew. So she moved to the town in like the middle of the week, so she wasn't there the first week of school. Um, so she wasn't there the first week of school, and they have only known each other for 3 days at this point. But this is what makes the story from this point forward really not make sense, because Will tells her, okay, you're my student. I cannot be with you. We cannot be in a romantic relationship, because if this was to be found out, I could lose my job, and I would not be able to support my 9-year-old little brother. Now, here are where a lot of logistical things in this book really start to fall apart, okay? You might have realized that earlier in this review I mentioned that Will was 21 years old, and you might have also heard me when I said he's her high school teacher. Are you confused? Because I am also confused. The way that the author, Colleen Hoover, tries to rectify this is essentially Will is a student teacher. And, okay, so even that part, so Will has his own class, okay? Will teaches this poetry elective. So I guess it's an elective, but even so, he has his own class. There's nobody monitoring him as he's teaching this class or anything. He just has complete control over it. The reason that 2 years after he graduates, he's able to teach this class is because he doubled up on his credits. So, how though, right? So you're trying to tell me that this guy, this 19-year-old little boy, was like a full-time student, right? So not just a full-time student, but he doubled up on his classes. So he's a full-time student, and was somehow able to have a job that was good enough for him to pay the bills in his house because he lives in the house that his parents took care of. And there is no mention throughout this entire book that his parents left him tons of money to live off of or anything like that, right? So this guy, it worked full time in school to double up on his credits and somehow also got a job to pay for the bills a of a whole house and was raising a 7-year old, and now he's a teacher at the age of 21. I'm just confused. I'm just really confused at this point. Not only that, but there is no mention. So in the book, it's complete constantly being said that he's still like a student in college, but at no point do we ever see him attend any classes. So I guess he's at the part of like the student teacher program where he just needs to teach a class before he can graduate or something, but this is never fully explained or developed within the text. Okay, now you understand just kind of the amount of logic that we're working with within the frame of the story. So he tells her that they can't be together, and she is very upset. What do you mean we can't be together? Didn't you feel it? Didn't you feel it? We have this connection. And she's just completely torn apart and upset by the fact that they cannot be together anymore. And I'm like, it was one date. And listen, okay, a lot of insta romances happen, but I feel that even with insta romances, the author at least does a good job of talking about how deeply they fell in love within those few moments. Within this book, I just left with the idea that they went on a date and that they had a good date. I didn't leave with the idea thinking that she was now madly, entirely heads over heels in love with him as a result of having been on this date. It was like, oh, I had a good time, you had a good time too. So her being so upset over the fact that he said they couldn't be together just really didn't make a lot of sense to me. And not only that, but he has a very good reason for saying that he doesn't want to be with you. He has got a lot on the line in terms of what this relationship is going to cost him. And so this has always been a huge problem for me with forbidden romance stories. With forbidden romance stories, there is 95% of the time a very good reason as to why the two characters cannot be together, right? So they're not together because someone is someone's teacher or somebody's boss or somebody's wife or somebody's best friend's boyfriend or something like that. And to me, the rewards of the romance and the relationship never outweigh like the cost of what it's going to be. You know what I mean? So in this situation, him losing his job and his career and not being able to support his 9-year-old little brother, who is very important to him, does not weigh does not outweigh the, you know, benefit of being in a relationship with a girl that he's known for 3 days. But I digress. So later on, her mother finds out that she is one of Will's students. And her mother goes across the street and is fussing at Will and is like, hey, this is inappropriate, blah, 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 which is very reasonable. You know, this as she should, as her mother. But the main character, Lake is the main character's name. I should have said that. Lake is very upset with her mother for going across the street and yelling at this guy. Excuse me. And I understand that she was upset because she was embarrassed, but at the same time, could she really be upset with her mom based off of the way that her mother reacted given the circumstances? I really don't think so. Okay, so at this point in the story, she's hearing her mother have a lot of phone calls, a lot of secretive phone calls, going to a lot of secretive meetings, and she comes to the conclusion that her mother has started dating somebody. At this point, it's been about 6 months since her father has died, and Lake feels that this is like too soon. It's too soon for her mother to be moving on. And she's upset that her mother has been keeping this a secret from her. And so she starts making all of these passive aggressive comments about her mother being the one to keep secrets. Now, Will, as her poetry teacher, so he tells the class that every person in the class needs to attend at least one poetry reading in order to pass the class in terms of participation. And he says that if they perform at the poetry reading, that he will pass them for the final as well. So that he will pass them for the final as well. So Lake is planning on going to the poetry place with a couple of her friends, and the mom notices, okay, Will's leaving and you're leaving, and the mom is suspicious that they're going off to meet together. And her mom is, starting to fuss at her because she thinks she's about to go meet Will, which technically she is, but really she's not. But really she's not. And she responds to her mother by, "You're the one keeping secrets, Mom!" And she slams the door and she just leaves. Now, this to me, okay, so I've just never been. Oh, and then here's the thing. So she yells at her mom on the front yard before she gets into the car with her friends. And here's the thing. I'm not a person who could yell at my mother in public, right? That's not something, especially not in front of new friends that I don't know very well. But maybe that's just me, and maybe that's just the way that I was raised. So they go to the poetry thing. She comes back from the poetry thing, and she goes inside, and her mother is just bawling. And she asks her mom what's wrong, and her mother, tells her, "I knew I shouldn't have kept it a secret from you. I have cancer." So it wasn't that her mother had a secret boyfriend. It was actually that her mother had cancer was the secret that she was keeping from her. And the mom had found out that she had cancer shortly before the father died. And she didn't want, and she and the father were supposed to tell Lake together that she had cancer, but then he died, and she didn't want to tell Lake by herself, and she also didn't want to tell her that she had cancer so soon after her father had died. And so that's why she had, been keeping it a secret for such a long time. And all of the secret phone calls and secret meetings where she was talking to her best friend Brenda, who was taking her to the doctor's office for her chemotherapy. And this upsets Lake very much, and she storms out of the house and she goes to Will's house and bangs on the door. Will lets her inside for reasons, and she says my mother is dying, and then she cries and she falls to the ground, and he lifts her up off of the ground and puts her in his bed. Okay, so there's a knock on the door, and he goes to the door, and she can hear that it's her mother talking, but she can't hear what her mother says. But all she hears Will say is, "She needs to be with me right now." And then he closes the door, and then he goes back to his room, crawls into bed with her, and holds her while she cries. Now, I understand that this was possibly supposed to be this very romantic moment, but nothing about this. Oh, wait a second. I think I skipped something. I did skip something. I think. Okay. I think there's a couple of things. Oh, yes, I did skip something. Okay, I'm sorry. But we'll get to that in a moment. It's okay. It doesn't really matter what the logical order of this is because it's all nonsense. And he holds her as she cries. This was so inappropriate to me. I could not get into this because I felt that it was such an inappropriate thing to do. First of all, you can't tell someone that you're not going to be with them and try to distance them from you emotionally and then let them come to your house crying at 1 o'clock in the morning and then like if he was going to allow her to sleep at his house, he should have allowed her to sleep in the bed by herself and then slept on the couch. But no, he went into the bed with her and curled his body around her, which was so inappropriate. Like, I understand that it was supposed to be cute and romantic, but it was not so to me. The other thing is, I cannot believe that the mother actually was like, "Oh, she needs you right now? Let me just go back home." No. Listen, this is how my mother would have handled it, and I don't know if your mother would have handled it similarly. Maybe this is just who my mother is as a person. But my mom would have been like, "No, young sir, you do not get to tell me what my daughter needs right now. And what my daughter especially doesn't need right now is to be in this house with her teacher whom she's been on a date with. So you better send her back out here right now before I call my little friends 911." Okay? That's how that conversation would have went. I don't understand why her mother just left. It's explained later in the book, but at this point, I just was not for that. So the part that I skipped over that was before this was they had lost their little brothers. He had come over to Lake's house and he was like, "Hey, is my little brother here?" No, he wasn't. They can't find either of their little brothers. And then they find them and they're like asleep inside of Lake's car. So then Will goes back home. Did I mention that they live right across the street from each other? That's probably important. So they go over to Will's house. I don't know why. I don't know why they both decide to walk to Will's house. When they found out where they were, Will should have been like, "Hey, Calder," because that's his little brother's name, "let's wake up. Let's go home." And she should have went home, and that's how that should have gone. But no, for some reason, they both go over to his house. They both sit down on his couch, and then they start making out. I couldn't get into this scene because I felt that it was extremely inappropriate for them to be making out with each other. But Will pushes her off of him after they're like in the heat of it, and he's like, "Nope, this is wrong. You have to get out of my house." Okay, so she's extremely upset and she leaves. Then the next day, because they were supposed to write a poem, she performs her poem, and her poem is there are the source says that there's 25 words or there's 25 synonyms for the word mean, and here are some of mine: butthole, douche nugget, jack, jerk, whatever. Like, she's like saying all of these words, and that's her whole poem is just reading off a bunch of these words. And to me, I was like, thank goodness that this main character is not good at poetry. Way to write realistic, relatable characters, Colleen Hoover. Like, mad respect. But here's the thing. So it was like, so she's very upset with him for saying, like, no, we can't be together. She's upset because she feels rejected and all of this stuff. But at the same time, it's like, well, can you be upset with him? He has a lot more to lose from this relationship than you do. But I do understand why she would be upset if he's saying, no, I can't be together. No, we can't be together. But then you're making out with me. Like, I would be frustrated with the inconsistency. But the way that the book is written, it doesn't seem like the main character is frustrated with the inconsistency. She's frustrated and angry because he rejected her at all, which doesn't make sense. But after she reads this poem to the class, I thought, well, now he's really not going to want to be with her because she's incredibly immature. Is that how that plays out? No, it's not. Because then we have the whole scene where she finds out her mother has cancer. She goes to his house. He wraps himself around her as she cries, which again, how are you going to push me out of your house and then curl up with me in bed? Like, it's too much for me at this point. Sorry, I gotta reposition myself. It's way too much for me at this point. Okay, so that happens. So then, she wakes up the next day. It's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and he says, hey, I'm gonna go take our brothers to the movies. You need to go talk to your mother. And then he kisses her on the forehead before he leaves. Okay, cool. So she goes across the street to speak to her mother about it. Her mother explains that her cancer is terminal. She's going to die. And then she says, I'm going to leave your little brother in the care of my best friend, Brenda. Lake is upset about this. How dare you leave him with her and not with me? And she storms out of the house and goes back to Will's house and starts psycho crazy cleaning it. She starts cleaning it. And I'm like, why are you upset about this? Listen, as we've established, this main character is in high school. This main character does not have a job. This main character does not have a home. This main character is 18 years old, okay? So, why would her mother leave her little brother to her when she is currently not in a position to take on the responsibility of caring for a 9-year-old? Whereas her mother's friend Brenda has a job or a means of supporting herself, has a house, has experience raising kids, and can raise the little brother. Like, why are you upset about this? And then Lake never stops to think, why would my mother leave my little brother with Brenda instead of with me? Here's the other thing. This main character, Lake, is emotionally unstable. Every single time something happens that doesn't go her way, she is flying off the handle. When Will rejects her, she's flying off the handle, embarrassing him in class by reading this stupid poem that wasn't even that good. When she thinks that her mother has a secret boyfriend, she's flying off the handle, yelling at her in front of the whole neighborhood. When she finds out that her mother has cancer, she's flying off the handle, running over to Will's house. When she finds out that her mother isn't leaving the kid to her, she's flying off the handle, going to Will's house. And it's like, you are not emotionally mature enough to take care of a 9-year-old. Why would I leave my child to you? Right? Are these also the questions you're asking? Because these are the questions I'm asking. Okay, so, cool, whatever. So, at some point in this book, I realized that what I thought would be a happy ending, what I consider would be a happy ending for this book, is not what Colleen Hoover thinks would be a happy ending for this book. My happy ending would be Will and Lake not dating for the entire time that she's in high school and waiting until she graduates to date again, or them just not dating at all. That would be what I would consider a happy ending. But apparently, Colleen Hoover thinks the happy ending would be them dating despite him being the teacher, right? And I realize this and I'm like, okay, fine. This is the hand that we're being dealt with this one, okay? Let's see. So she finally ends up okay. So a couple of other things happen. I really don't want to talk about them, but eventually her mom is like, okay, fine. I'm going to leave the little brother with you. Cool, whatever. Then later on, she is going to go perform at the slam poetry thing. And when she wasn't supposed to be there, she was supposed to be somewhere else, but she decides to go. And when she goes, she hears Will read this poem. And essentially, the poem is about how much he loves her. Now, if you guys are also confused as to how these two characters arrived at the conclusion that what they felt for each other is love, you are not alone, because I am also confused. They went on one date and they have had no quality time together since that singular date. The only time that they've had together was that one time when they made out on the couch. Then there was that other time when she cried and he held her. They have not had any time together outside of the classroom when she's with 20 other students. They're not talking and bonding and reminiscing and building strong connections. It's literally they are holding on to that singular date that they had 3 months ago, and they're like putting all of their emotional eggs in that basket, and I just couldn't follow through with it. Like, I think that the author needed to really marinate more on it, on some of the individual interactions that they had, or made more of a big deal out of the first date that they had, or had put in more situations where they are together, where they like want to be together, or like where they are together spending quality time with each other, because them using the word love, like they are throwing it out like it is confetti, and they're really acting like it's applicable to the situation that they are in. Whatever. So she goes, and she, and his poem, and it was a really great poem. It was so beautiful. I was so mad because I was like, I guess that was kind of cute. Like, that's honestly how I felt. I was like, I'm so mad that was such a cute poem, because I don't approve of their relationship, but it's cool. So, she's too, like, overwhelmed by this realization, and she leaves, and she interacts with this guy named Javi, who's in her class, and he's like, let me walk you to your car. No, I don't want you to walk me to my car. I'm gonna walk you to your car. So they get to her car. She left her keys inside. Let me walk you to my car. Okay, they walk to his car, and he forces himself on her and starts like making out with her, even though she clearly doesn't want it. She's like, no, and he's like, you keep telling me no, but I know you want it. Anyways, which was gross. It was horrible. It gave me Twilight vibes. Especially, dude, this hair. Then Javi isn't there anymore. She opens her eyes and Will has him on the ground and is punching him out, right? Okay, cool. Will drives her home, and this is fine because they live across the street from each other. But instead of carrying her into her house, he carries her into his. And then he puts ice on her back and then calls her mother. And I'm like, why didn't you just drop her off at home? Like, what? Okay, cool. The next day, the police want her to give a statement because I guess Javier was trying to put charges against Will for fighting him or something. And she tells her story and she's like, hey, Javier was forcing himself on me. Will came and saved the day. Later on, she finds out that Will wasn't punching Javier because he thought Javier was forcing himself on her. He was punching Javier because she thought that they were consensually kissing and he was jealous of Javier and started beating him up. So we're just getting jealous boyfriend vibes now. And not even jealous boyfriend, but like psycho anger management maniac vibes. He's punching this random dude that you were kissing because he's jealous while you're in the middle of kissing him. Like, obviously, that's not what happened, but like, I literally cannot. It took me a week to finish this book. I would have finished it within 2 or 3 days if I didn't have to stop every paragraph to rant and rave about what was going on. Okay, but that's never addressed. It's never addressed that he acted like an angry psycho during that time period. It's just like, oh wow, that's hot because he was jealous. Oh my gosh. And then they start making out, and then she's like, oh, oh wait, no, wait, this was so funny. So they start kissing, and she says, of course I kiss him. I let my arms fall to my sides and I dropped the tape measure. So she's like kissing him like this. And I'm like, yep, because if there's anything Disney movies taught us, like Disney princess movies taught us, is that kisses are so much more hot when you're comatose, like when you're paralyzed. Am I right? Anyways, so she's like, oh, can we be together now? And he goes, oh no. Okay, so after the whole Javier situation, the school district decided that it was better for Will to keep or to do his work teach program some other place. So he's going to go teach at some school in Detroit now, but he's like, no, we actually still can't be together. So now Lake is really mad. She's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just kissed me. And it was like, I had a weak moment. You had a weak moment. And she's angry and she storms out of the house, as she has the right to be angry, but I do not care anymore. I've never cared about this love, so except for when he read that poem, because the poem was really cute. But anyways, so then her mother, so she's avoiding Will for like a really long time. They're keeping their interactions very short. They're just like only talk to each other when it's about their brothers, who's gonna watch them, blah, 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 blah. And, what happens? So then she's talking to her mother, and her mother says, you know, like, I really feel like I gave you some bad advice. And she says, like, you know, what do you mean? And she says, I always told you to think with your head and not your heart, but you think with your head too much. And I think that it's getting in the way of you and Will having real happiness. I'm like, at no point during this entire book can I have accused Lake of not thinking with her heart. She is overly emotional to a fault. She is always reacting by her feelings. She never logically thinks about the implications that her actions will have on others, and she never puts forth the thought to think about and reason through why various characters make the actions that they make, such as Will not wanting to date her because he might lose his job, or her mother not wanting to leave her son to her because she's 18. At no point does she ever think with her head. This was the most inappropriate advice that she could have given to this particular character. I could understand if somebody told this to like Katniss Everdeen, but not to Lake Cohen. This was not the appropriate advice to give to Lake Cohen, who all she does is think with her heart. And not only that, but Will, what do you mean getting in the way of her and Will having true happiness? She's 18 and he's 21. They're not old spinsters who will never find love again. So at this point, context is a little bit important because Lake's mother married her first boyfriend, which was Lake's father, and they had a beautiful, happy marriage. So more than likely, her mother is possibly thinking like it's fine that she and Will love each other and they like each other, therefore they should just go for it. But I feel like also Lake's mother should recognize that her situation is not the norm. Statistics show that the younger you are when you get married, the more likely your marriage is to end up in divorce. And not only that, but like I said, she's 18, he's 21, they will find other people. And it seems to me that if Will stands to risk losing his job over being with Lake, if he loses his job, he loses his livelihood, he loses his ability to take care of his younger brother, who means oh so much to him, that their relationship would actually be standing in the way of their happiness instead of being an aid and a tool to it. And I don't think that she would be happy, but honestly, this is one of the most selfish main characters I have ever read about in such a long time. So I'm like I wouldn't even put it past her. But if she was a normal, healthy, selfless human being, then I would think that she wouldn't be happy knowing that she caused all of these back things to Will. But, and also, can we talk about the complete 180 her mother did? Are we going to talk about that? Can we talk about that? Nope. Okay, cool. Anyways, so she goes to the poetry slam thing because it's Thursday night and she reads her poem. Her poems are like my least favorite poems in this entire book, which again, I'm glad that she's not good at poetry. The other poems that other characters have read have actually been so fantastic. Like, so good. Honestly, I don't read poetry, but like the poetry in this book was so good. Except for Lake's poems. Lake's poems were trash. But she reads this poem about how she loves him, and then he reads a poem about how he loves her, and like he wanted to love her, but life wouldn't let him love her. Or something. And yes, his poem was amazing because Will is actually a really good poet. I'm sorry. I had to say it. He is. He's a great poet. I'm sorry. You know, it is what it is. And they're together. So then the next after this is the epilogue. This is a year later. At this point, her mother has been dead for 3 months. Will did not take another job for the second semester, so that they are able to be together. I'm assuming that's why he took that job, so that they could be together. And then it says that he lived off of student loans for the next semester. I actually had to look this up because I was deeply confused, okay? I'm sorry. You can't use student loans for things that aren't student related. Am I wrong? If I'm wrong, please let me know. So, and mind you, Will lives in a house. So, he's not earning an income because he's not a teacher. He's living off of student loans, meaning that he's using the money that he was supposed to get to be attending college or something to pay mortgages on his house and pay his car note and his gas and buy his groceries for him and his little brother. What? How? Where? What? I can't. I literally, it's beyond me. Anyways, her mother writes her a letter, and it might have been touching if I cared. Cool. Thanks for listening to my rant review. So the other thing about this book was that Colleen Hoover said that she was inspired by the Avett Brothers lyrics. Find out what you want to do and go do it, or find out what you want to be. Or it says decide what to be and go be it. And it's from their songs like Head Full of Doubt, Road Full of Promise. And as a result of that, she actually put a lot of Avett Brother lyrics on like every single page. There's Avett Brother lyrics, which is actually kind of really cool. I read some of the lyrics. They were kind of too deep. Like, the Avett Brothers lyrics reminded me of why I don't read poetry because I just don't want to work that hard to read. I just kind of like want to read and, whatever. But it did make me actually want to go and listen to their songs. So I actually listened to a couple of Avett Brothers songs. I didn't hate it. It was like emo cowboy music, and I don't mind country music. I just like hybrid country music. Like, I like rock country and like pop country and like R&B country and like blues country. I don't like just standard barnyard country, and theirs was like sappy barnyard country. Like, I could literally smell the hay and like see the twinkling lights lined on like the barn that they were like singing with. That's how it was. But I think also Avett Brothers was just kind of you have to be in a particular mood for it. And something that Lake and Will bond over is Avett Brothers, and it makes a lot of sense because she's from Texas. And not that all people from, also they kind of make a lot of comments about how like she doesn't like country music, but like the Avett Brothers are country music, so I don't know what that was about. But it also makes a lot of sense for kind of the things that both of the main characters had been through, why they would connect so deeply to the Avett Brothers and their like depressing banjo songs. Okay, that was pretty much it. So like I said, I'm trying to complete all of the books in my room, and this is a trilogy. I do unfortunately own the next two books, but the biggest problem for me with this particular book was a lot of the logistical things with the plot and also the forbidden romance aspect of it. But the forbidden romance seems to have actually been completed in this book, so I'm looking forward to the other books, hoping that forbidden romance doesn't continue, and if Will and Lake do continue to be together, it's not going to have that aspect added to it as well. And also, this was Colleen Hoover's debut novel. Not that that's really an excuse for the rampant plot holes and like nonsense logic, but hopefully that kind of gets cleaned up with the next few books. Okay, well, if you enjoyed seeing me lose my sanity over this book, please, please, please like and subscribe to join the party. Bye.